On today's walk I'll be exploring two historic routes, an old Roman road and an old railway, now known as the Castleman Trailway. Walking in the footsteps of Vespasian and Charles Castleman, I'll also see parts of Upton Heath, discover an ancient oak tree, pass through busy and quieter areas, and learn more about the history of the area. I'll be finishing at a former railway hotel, so please join me here in Broadstone near Poole, Dorset, for another episode of Walks and Pubs. And I'm starting my walk right at the place where I intend to end it, at the pub here in the centre of Broadstone. Shall I go right in? Haha, luckily it's still closed. Otherwise this episode would turn out to be a rather short and different one. Let's get going. The first stretch of the journey will be along the Castleman Trailway, and I'll be there in 150 yards. From here I'll make my way to the Roman road. Starting in the suburban surroundings, the trek first takes pedestrians through two underpasses at Broadstone roundabout. Look at all these beautiful daffodils blooming here in the middle of March. Just after passing the roundabout, the trail suddenly looks like this, which is quite remarkable given that we're still in the same setting, right in the middle of Broadstone and next to a busy road. I like that. Let's see where this path takes me. The birds and other animals surely enjoy this narrow green space, squeezed between Broadstone Way and a residential area, and I enjoy hearing the birdsong. Not so much the sound of the road. It's certainly an interesting combination. Anyway, it's nice not to be walking on tarmac all the time. After about 3/4 of a mile from Broadstone roundabout, I leave the busy road behind. Staying on the Castleman Trailway, I soon find myself in quieter surroundings. It rained last night, and this woodland pool has been topped up by the small brook coming from the other side of the footpath. I'm on the southwestern edge of Broadstone now, and along the stretch of Castleman Trailway I've walked so far, I've frequently seen footpaths branching off in different directions, providing links to the surrounding neighborhoods. Now it's time to leave the Castleman Trailway. Following the sign pointing to Upton Park and Poole, the path will take me to the Roman road. After passing under the old railway bridge, I get my first impressions of the Upton Heath Nature Reserve, which covers around 500 acres, lies to the west of Broadstone, and to the left of the Roman road in my direction of travel. Let's start exploring this new path, which runs in a fairly straight line similar to the Castleman Trailway, just as the Romans typically preferred to build their roads. This ancient route was built by the Second Augustan Legion, commanded by Vespasian, soon after the Romans invaded Britain, or Britannia as they called it, in AD 43. Vespasian would later go on to become Roman Emperor. One of the purposes of this road was to help conquer the surrounding area, which was inhabited by the Celtic Durotriges. It's probably fair to say they may not have been entirely thrilled with the Romans' idea of becoming their new overlords. Nevertheless, the road was built, initially to supply a large base fortress at a place called Lake near Wimborne, from a port at Hemworthy which was then named Morriconia. Later the road was extended north towards Bath, and met the Roman road from Salisbury to Dorchester at the Badbury Rings Hill Fort, which was still used by the Durotriges when the Romans arrived. Its remains not far from here are still visible today. About 2000 years ago we would have met Roman soldiers right here, but also all sorts of other people, like merchants, local people, farmers or travelers. And all kinds of goods would have passed along this route, from wine and pottery arriving at the port to locally produced corn being transported inland. While this section is now a footpath and bridleway, the infrastructure left behind by the Romans was reused in other places to build modern roads on top of it, which we'll see shortly. Upton Heath stretched from Dorchester to what is now Christchurch at the time of the Roman conquest. Today this area south of Corfe Mullen, west of Broadstone and north of Upton has a few footpaths which I should explore at some point, and it's home to several bird and reptile species. What do we have here? I might find a place to have a short break over there in that meadow. Perfect, that looks like a good spot. After marching along like a legionary, I'll have some of the sandwiches I packed. With breakfast finished, I'm back on the Roman road, and it seems like it'll take me into a residential area next. After only a few yards walking beside this surfaced version of the Roman road, I leave it. At Beacon Road, I turn left. I'm hoping to take in a few more views of Upton Heath here. There's nothing here that strongly indicates this, but I've just left Broadstone and am now in Castleman. The Roman road serves as a boundary between the two. Although both are in the county of Dorset, they fall under two different councils. It's Dorset Council for Castleman in the west, and Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council for Broadstone to the east of the Roman road. I wonder if good old Vespasian would approve of this. At the end of Beacon Road there's this beautiful part of Upton Heath, and after a few more yards I find myself right in the middle of it. To me this looks like a perfect spot for a picnic, but I've still got a bit of a journey ahead, and I haven't long finished my breakfast. This stretch is a bit muddy. Next, this narrow path between gorse bushes takes me uphill, where I'm rewarded with these magnificent views across Upton Heath all the way to Upton Lake, about 2 miles in the distance. Part of Poole is also visible. A short stroll along Leslie's Heath, and I'm back in the residential parts of Castleman, Cove Lodge Road in this case. Lavender Way over there is where a lavender farm stood in the early 1900s. I reckon the whole area must have smelled wonderful when it was in bloom. That was a nice detour. Castleman is certainly a nice place to live, but so is Broadstone. Let's head back there, to the Roman road, and see how it continues. The upcoming stretch of the Roman road will take me through a mix of residential streets and footpaths. At the end of this section, I'll cross Gladelands Way and pick up the footpath on the other side. After reaching Springdale Road, which I also crossed, 40 yards of footpath take me into another residential area. I'll continue through here for roughly 700 yards, until the surfaced road once again comes to an end for me, at the junction of Highfield Road and Lancaster Drive. It's around 700 more yards of walking, and I reach the B3074, where it's known as Blandford Road on one side and Higher Blandford Road on the other. This is my final bit of Roman road for today. The second part of my journey will take me along Rushcombe Bottom and through Ashington, before I arrive at a busier area, where the Castleman Trailway will guide me back towards Broadstone. If you've enjoyed this video so far and would like to see more of my content in the future, you should consider subscribing to this channel. I'm heading in a northeasterly direction now, via the hamlet of Ashington, towards the northernmost point of this walk, near the River Stour and the A31 road. This first takes me along Rushcombe Bottom, a local nature reserve and site of special scientific interest, recognized for its diverse and scarce wildlife. It forms part of the Corfe Barrows Nature Park, with areas of woodland, heathland, meadows and pastures, all connected by footpaths and guided trails. These country lanes have no pavements, so I need to be mindful of the occasional car. I do wonder who came up with some of the place names in this area. Look at this picturesque little settlement, set in the middle of the green countryside. At the end of Ashington Lane, I turn right into Willett Road. The busy road over there is where I'm heading next, whether I like it or not. I've made it to the north of my route, and I'm getting a glimpse of the star. From this point between the A31 and the river, I led east to rejoin the Castleman Trailway. It's getting busier again. I've arrived at Oakley Hill Road, which takes me back to the south of the A31. The Willett Arms looks like a nice pub, but I'm aiming to get back to Broadstone and have my pint there. Right behind the Willett Arms, I'm back on the Castleman Trailway, which will take me back to my start and finish in Broadstone. But after just a few yards, I'm taking another detour, because I'd like to stop at Fenners Field for a short break. You're seeing that right, I've been carrying half a roast chicken and a tub of potato salad with me the entire time. And I'm about to eat them now. Long walks require proper food in my opinion. I'm in the Merley area of Poole here, and on the edge of this recreation ground stands a rather special oak tree. How old do you think it is? I'll tell you. Fenners oak tree is a staggering 500 years old, meaning it was already around when Henry VIII ruled over England. Imagine living for 500 years. You'd have time for at least as many wives or husbands as Henry. This grand veteran tree has a girth of nearly 7 meters, or 23 feet, making it the oldest tree in Poole. It must be beautiful in full leaf, and will hopefully be here for many years to come. One final push along the Castleman Trailway, and I'll be back in Broadstone, where the pub will hopefully be open by then. I'm really looking forward to that well-earned pint. As I mentioned before, the Castleman Trailway follows a disused railway line. To be precise, it runs along a roughly 18-mile section of the old Southampton and Dorchester Railway, starting on the edge of the New Forest, in the village of Crow, near Ringwood in Hampshire, and ending at Upton Country Park in Poole. It takes its name from Charles Castleman, a Wimborne solicitor who was largely responsible for building the line in the 19th century. The railway from Southampton to Dorchester opened in 1847, and over time there were railway stations and halts at Ringwood, Ashley Heath, Westmoors, Wimborne, Broadstone, Creekmore and Holts Bay, amongst others. The somewhat circuitous route bypassing Lymington, Christchurch and Bournemouth, which at the time was still a small settlement founded only 37 years earlier, earned it the nickname Castleman's Corkscrew. When a new line from Brockenhurst to Poole via Christchurch and Bournemouth opened in 1888, passenger numbers on this route began to decline. This eventually led to the closure of this section in the 1960s, with the final passenger service running in 1964. However, parts of the original Southampton to Dorchester Railway, from Southampton to Brockenhurst, and from Hamworthy to Dorchester are still in use today. What do you think? Are you sad about the disappearance of the old railway? Should it be revived? For my part, I'm quite glad that it's gone. I totally hate having to jump on it off the tracks all the time. Many of the people arriving in Broadstone by train would have come here to play golf at Broadstone Golf Club. Even 4 prime ministers are said to have played here, one of them being Winston Churchill. The club was founded in 1898 by Ivor Guest, 1st Baron Wimborne. The annual subscription was 2 guineas, with an entrance fee of the same amount. Yes, guineas, meaning neither guinea pigs nor Guinness. 2 guineas were worth 42 shillings, or £2.10 in decimal. That's roughly £240 in today's money. Only a quarter of a mile left to get back to the centre of Broadstone, where I started. Broadstone has been around for quite some time, as it's mentioned in the Domesday Book. However, it was only after the arrival of the railway that it began to grow into the place we know today. Broadstone supposedly takes its name from broad stones, forming a bridge over a local stream. But as far as I know, that's more legend than fact. The settlement lies about 4 miles from Poole town centre, and has been described as both a village and a suburb. However, Broadstone has recently received its own town council, and I suppose that means it can now officially call itself a town. Congratulations! If you make it to city status, I'll come back, do this nearly 9-mile walk again, and have a pint after every mile. How does that sound? Speaking of pints, I'm only a few paces away from the end of my walk, and the pub is already waiting for me, over there on the left, just beyond the junction. It's called the Goods Yard, and is located in the old railway hotel. After learning so much about the history of the area on this walk, I now know why Broadstone had such a hotel. Hopefully you do too. Otherwise it might be time to go back and watch the video again. You might need it for the pub quiz. Let's go inside. The Goods Yard's mission is to serve good food and good drinks in a good venue, and I must say, I like what I'm seeing. It's located opposite the site of the former railway station, which at its height had 4 substantial platforms and, you've guessed it, a goods yard. The building is the only remaining part of the railway. The goods yard frequently hosts pub quizzes and live music and shows live sports. On Sundays they serve Sunday roasts, and from Wednesdays to Saturdays pizzas, burgers and pub classics are on the menu. Fish and chips were £16.50, and I found many excellent reviews online when I checked at the beginning of May 2026. More information is available on their website. The friendly barman even subscribed to this channel. I suggest you follow his example. It really helps a lot. I've decided to have an alcohol-free pint of stout today. This is quite unusual for me. But let me tell you, after this long walk, the 0% version is just as refreshing as the real deal. Cheers! Let's have a look at the map now, to see the route I took before finishing here. Today's walk started and ended at the Goods Yard pub, on Station Approach in Broadstone. From there I headed to the Castleman Trailway, which took me in a southwesterly direction. The trailway first runs along the busy Broadstone way, but after a while the narrow stretch of greenery between residential areas bends further to the west, where it meets the Roman road. Now heading north I followed this ancient route, and had a short break before reaching Beacon Road in another residential area. Here I left the Roman road for a while, and walked up the hill, where I was rewarded with breathtaking views of Upton Heath and Upton Lake. Back on the Roman road I continued north. Along this stretch residential streets and footpaths alternate, and I crossed 2 intersections before arriving at the B3074. After crossing it I reached Rushcombe Bottom a few yards later, where I left the Roman road. Heading northeast I soon arrived at one of several old railway bridges in the area. I crossed it and continued via Ashington Lane, passing through Ashington along the way. At the end of Ashington Lane I turned right into Willett Road, and continued until I passed under the A31, where I found myself near the River Stour in the northernmost section of the route. The dividing line between the settlements of Oakley and Merley doesn't seem entirely clear here, but I passed what I believe to be Oakley first before arriving at the B3073, known as Oakley Hill. After crossing it I turned right, and after passing the Willett Arms pub, briefly rejoined the Castleman Trailway. Just a few paces later though, I took a shortcut through the woods, which led me to Fenners Field, likely in Merley, where I had another break, admiring the 500-year-old oak tree. Back on the Castleman Trailway I headed southwest, passing an old railway tunnel, Delph Woods and Broadstone Golf Course, before arriving back in Broadstone. Thirsty and a little bit tired, I returned to the Goods Yard, where I enjoyed a pint, and the sense of achievement after walking these 8.9 miles. After visiting the pub, all that's left for me to do is catch the bus back to Bournemouth. If you'd like to get here, there's a car park near the start and end point of my walk. If you're using public transport, the nearest bus stops are St John's Church, United Reformed Church and Broadway, while the closest railway stations are Parkstone, Poole and Hamworthy. It's been a pleasure showing you around today. Thanks for joining me. Take care and hopefully see you soon. Cheers!